Today we got this 1958 or 59 wheel horse RJ garden tractor. I picked this up at a tractor show last year. I ended up getting just the frame with the seat and the steering wheel and the lift. No motor, no tires, no front axle. I just got back from picking up this front axle off a different tractor. Someone did sandblast it, which isn't my favorite thing in the world. I kind of would have preferred for it to be original paint, but we'll see what I'm doing with that yet, whether I want to paint it or honestly just let it rust and match the whole rest of the tractor. But we're working on getting this axle set up on here. I had to make a new pin because one of the pins was missing. I just took a piece of 3/4 inch rod and I drilled a 3/8 hole in it, and then I welded I believe this is a 1/4 inch washer. Either way, the outside diameter is about 1 inch, which leaves a little lip on there to attach the axle together. And then there's a steering block that goes on the bottom of this shaft over here. A pin goes through there once it's on the wheel. That attaches to there. Another one of these pins, just like this one, I do have that one. It's a bit worn, but I do have it. Goes in here. And then I need to make up, because all this was missing when I got it, I have to make up a rod, a round rod, a piece of 3/8 rod, and bend it up into a U shape. Here's that rod. We'll bend it up to attach the wheel to this bar that moves the wheels side to side. As this turns, it'll push and pull on that rod, which will make the axle turn. Of course, I don't have that pin in there, so they're not going to move together. Now they will. So I got to figure that out. But this project was a pretty good deal because I paid $5 for the whole tractor. Again, not including the engine, tires, wheels, or front axle. But I'm still not in it too much, and these are getting to be really rare and really hard to find. I also need to pick up a different set of agriculture tires because these are too wide. It wouldn't have initially mattered, but I also picked up with that front axle a set of fenders and a toolbox and a rear hitch for it. So to make those fenders fit on there, these are gonna have to come off, and a skinnier set needs to be put on. I've got a set of rims that are gonna fit it, but they need different tires on them because these are completely shot. So what we're gonna do next is we're gonna take this axle off, and as you can see, I have a 3/4 inch fine thread bolt there because that's also missing off the frame. Originally it's supposed to be welded on. I'll show you what I picked up here. So here's what it looks like with that off. Again, there's supposed to be a bolt welded on here, but it didn't come with one. So I have a 3/4 16 fine thread. This is grade 8 because that's all they had for fine thread was in grade 8. And it's 3 inches long. 3 inches long because I need this flat spot here. I don't necessarily want the axle riding on the threads. You can see there's just enough there for that axle to ride on there, on the smooth portion, and then the threads here. So the threads are too long. I need to cut them down. I need to cut about, actually almost 1.5 inches off of that. So there's just a couple threads left to be able to put a lock nut on there. So that way the axle can still pivot, but it's not going to come off. So we're going to cut this down. We'll take about 1.5 inches off of there. Here's that part finished. So what we got going on here is about 1 1/8 of no threads, and we'll say about 5/8 of threads sticking through. And that'll be our finished part. So now we can slide this in here, and you got enough to have the axle pivot on there and enough threads to get your lock nut on there. For now, I'm not going to weld this in place, because if I were, I would not be able to slip the axle on, because someone had added this. All of this is not supposed to be here. This isn't factory. That's someone else's addition. I'm not sure if they made it to like put a plow on here, or what the intentions of that was, or if they were trying to make like a single wheel in the front. I'm really not sure. But I'm going to want to play with it a little bit first, and once I'm happy with it and don't have any problems, then I will finally cut this entire piece off. I just want to, it's actually kind of makes a nice stand for it, not having an axle on there. It's a good place for it to sit when it has no axle. Sits kind of level. So we'll get that bolted on there. Got it laying on its back now. And we can see that we got that nut on there, and it still pivots. So you want that just tight enough to hold it in place. That's why we had to use a nylon lock nut. So this project is not going to be complete until I find more parts, because that's why I got it for $5, because the transmission is completely shot. Bottom's blown out of it, and there's a cast piece here on the differential that this gear bolts to, and every single bolt hole is ripped right out of it. And when that blew up, it must have blew the bottom out, so it needs a transmission. But just to try to get this front axle going on here, and then I'll just have to wait until I can finally find the transmission. Something else kind of weird, I'm not sure if this hole is supposed to be 3/8. I'm really not sure, because on this block here that came off a different tractor, it only has about an 1/8 inch hole in there. Interesting. So here's what I'm doing for now until I can figure something else out, because again, this is just all figuring out the front end, and this thing isn't going to be driving anytime soon until I get that transmission. But just to play with this, I took a piece of, I think this is brake line, that's got a 3/8 outside diameter, and I'm just using it as a spacer to try to take a little bit of the slop out of there. And then we'll throw this in on here. And then I just have a cotter pin. Again, for now, I think what it needs is a 3/8 bolt through there, but it's kind of weird because I don't understand why these holes are that small, why there isn't a 3/8 hole in this, because there's a ton of slop in it. A ton. Even with that little spacer I threw in there. But just for now, that's what we're doing. So we'll take this bar now, and it goes on one of the axles there. And then we'll grab another pin. I'll use the original on this because you're actually gonna see it. And slide that into there. And then I'll take my homemade welded up pin, and this one goes in here like that. So now all we have to do is straighten out the axle, get it going straight. And we'll straighten out our steering wheel, even though, again, it has all that slop in it. We'll try to get to the middle of the slop. And now I need to make a U-shaped bar to connect these two together. So I got this, again, 3/8 rod, and I went ahead and drilled an 1/8 inch hole in it. So this is going to go in here like that. And then I got to bend it here a 90, figure out the length I need, and then I'll put the 90 on that side. Okay, I got that piece of rod made up. Totally guessing on the length. It's about 7 3/4 in total length. And then the bends are not perfectly straight with each other. One of them is at approximately a 45-degree angle, and the other one is straight. And it was my mistake. I learned this by trying to put it together. I had this pin upside down the first time when I was putting it through and putting a hole, I suppose you'd say facing down, facing this direction, because the tractor is tipped up on its side. No, this one needs to be like this on there. So we'll get our hole lined up, and I'll put one end in here, and then the other end goes in here. I also drilled some 1/8 inch holes in the ends of the rod, so that way we can put cotter pins in there to hold it in place. Right there, if the camera will focus. Again, this is all just kind of mocked up just to see if it works. So we'll throw cotter pins, I'm not even going to bend them, in there, and then one over here to hold that rod in place so it doesn't slip out. And then I got to take some snap rings and put a snap ring on this right here to hold that bar in place. We'll do that quick. So I got that snap ring in there and everything is put back together. Got all the pins in there for temporary, and as you can see, left and right. Works perfect. Now all I gotta do is bend them pins around and cut the extra off. Got all those pins shortened and bent over, so that's all working really good now. The front axle, as far as I'm concerned for now, is done. Might have to revisit again that hole. I'm not sure why the hole is so much smaller in this block than it is in the actual steering wheel rod there, so I'll have to figure that out and come back to that later. But for now, since it doesn't drive anyways, that'll be just fine. I also got these tires mounted on here with some spacers. These are the wrong size front tires, but they fit on there just fine. And the snap rings are in there for them because these use snap rings instead of cotter pins like most lawn tractors do. But that looks pretty good. And these have bearings in them too. This isn't riding on the shaft, it's on a bearing, which is nice because it won't wear out that shaft. So that looks pretty good as far as I am concerned. The next thing we're going to look at is putting this hitch on. This pin in here is kind of mushroomed out and it's stuck in there. So got to try to get that out or figure something out to hook that up to the back. And eventually these fenders and this toolbox will go on. That might be in another video though.